Welcome back to the Garden with Joe and Holly radio show. Moments away, Marjory Wildcraft. But first, even though fall is upon us, we still get those warm days, and those warm days equal active yellow jackets, and rescue can put a kibosh on that problem for you.
Yeah, I just saw a yellow jacket yesterday. So during these warm days, you might notice these yellow jackets. They're looking for your barbecue meats, sweet drinks, water sources, what have you.
You?
Yeah, me apparently. So Rescue has yellow jacket traps. They're an eco-friendly, do-it-yourself option to let those stinging pests stay away from you or me. Those traps are a powerful lure for yellow jackets and will not attract beneficial honeybees. All Rescue products are made in the USA. You can go to rescue.com where you can find the yellow jacket traps and other pest control solutions. That is rescue.com.
Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Marjory Wildcraft is the founder of the Grow Network, which is a community of people focused on modern self-sufficient living. She's passionate about growing your own food, being self-sufficient, and being a good steward for the earth. She recently authored The Grow System, the essential guide to modern self-sufficient living, from growing food to making medicine. Welcome to the program, Marjory.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for taking time out of, obviously, your very busy schedule to enlighten and educate Holly and myself and all of our listeners across the country.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So tell us more about the Grow Network. What people can find when they go there. How did it become, and what it is today, and what's the meaning behind it?
Yeah, well, years ago, I was volunteering on a farm-to-table project to get locally grown vegetables in the elementary school, right? We thought it was a no-brainer, slam dunk, and what I found out was there are no locally grown vegetables. Like, really, all the Willie Nelson concerts to save the family farm did not work.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, that 45-minute drive from Austin to Red Rock made sense. There's no guys, tanned guys on tractors. There's no grain silos. There's no fields of food. There's, just maybe, a new Dollar General and another subdivision going in. So, and if you go out in the countryside and look around, there's not. And it just shocked me to the core. And I knew there was only 4 days worth of food supply in the grocery store. And I knew that we all were dependent on a just-in-time trucking system, and I knew that it takes 1,200 calories of energy to get 100 calories to your plate, and that's not sustainable. And I said, oh my gosh, I think I had better learn how to grow food. And so that was really and I was like in a total panic. I was freaked out. I had small kids. Like, if any kind of collapse situation happened, I knew, I was in Texas, like surrounded by 12 million people, that we were in a world of hurt. And I think, actually, I know I was just ahead of my time, the panic and sense of unease, and I had the night sweats and just, general freak out that a lot of people are going through right now because they're starting to realize the vulnerability of our systems. I will tell you, the short punchline is that, growing your own food will heal you on the physical level because of the nutrition, on the emotional level and the spiritual level. Just, having the confidence that you can provide for yourself no matter what happens makes you so much stronger. And so basically that's what came out of it, was like, oh my God, this is a huge problem. If we don't address this, there's going to be a time when there's a huge problem, and we're here.
Right.
There is a time.
You knew there was a problem. You knew that, cross your fingers, hope it never happens, that we see the shortness of the food in the stores, but reality set in, and that's where we're at. Yeah.
So fortunately, I have about 2 decades now that I've been at this, and I've been able to figure out what is the fastest and easiest way to take somebody who knows absolutely nothing, who is probably older and maybe out of shape or overweight, and how do you get them with all they have is a backyard, maybe a hose and some other small resources. How can you take them in the fastest and easiest and quickest way and get them to producing a lot of food that's deeply nutritious, that's going to heal them and is going to be significant? And how do you do that? So, fortunately, I've had all these years to do it. Some of my early attempts were pretty bad, like, oh my God, I made this one video and everybody was like, it's fantastic, but I could never do that. It was just too complicated. Mm-hmm. So I've really learned how to dial it in over the years and develop courses and trainings and information. So when people go to the Grow Network, you'll see a blog. We post new posts up there almost every day on all kinds of interesting topics related to food production or preservation or cooking. You'll find we have an academy where we have a whole bunch of courses where we'll teach you whatever you want to know about growing different, chickens, gardens, mushrooms, goats, greenhouses. We also have a really active and engaged forum because over the decades, I've developed a really big following of people who go, yeah, you know what, Marjory, what you're doing makes a ton of sense and I want to help out and I want to be a part of this. So we have really amazing forums. And we also have a store which sort of funds the whole thing, which is where we sell some kits. How do you make elderberry syrup, or how do you make, how do you make a tincture? Just some basic home medicine kind of stuff, which funds the whole business. So it's really it's a mature business. I mean, we've been at it now for more than a dozen years. We've been online. And we've got a team of about 9 dedicated people that work on this, and I think we're the largest organization of its kind that does this. So we're all dedicated to just how do you grow food, how do you make medicine, how do you become self-sufficient in your backyard in a grid down situation.
That's amazing. So we know soil is lifeblood of the plants. We talk about that a lot, but from your perspective, obviously, why soil is so important, but how can people really build their soil, I guess, in the most efficient way that they can get a good grow out of it the fastest, essentially?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And it tells me that you guys really are clued in, because most people think of soil as just dirt to hold the plant up, but it's so much more, right? It's where all the plant gets its vitamins and minerals and life, right? So you need to have a really good, healthy soil. And I'm willing to bet 99% of, I bet you don't, and everybody listening doesn't have good soil because, our ancestors knew the value of good soil, and that's where they placed our cities, and all that's been concreted over now, right?
Yeah.
So I recommend for a gardening method, and believe me, I have gardened almost every way you can garden. I really, at this point in time, especially for beginners, I recommend a raised bed garden. Cinder blocks stacked too high. You make a bed that's 5 feet wide by 12.5 feet long. Cinder block only weighs about 16 pounds, which can easily be handled by a woman or a child, right? You can totally do this. And buy the best soil you possibly can. Now, you're going to always need to be maintaining that soil, and we have a lot. One of our best free books that we give out is called 50 Homemade Fertilizers, which is homemade ways to keep maintaining the fertility and to keep growing your soil. And there's a lot of stuff, coffee grounds, banana peels, grass clippings, all this kind of stuff. You start learning to compost it and make it. And yes, all of us need to be building soil. That's what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives, quite frankly.
Well, and you talk about your videos on the Grow Network on the website. A lot of the videos that you are in, you're barefoot. Now, what is this like a Cody Lundin thing that you've trained your feet to absorb any type of terrain, or what's the story behind that?
It's fun. I actually see Cody about once a year. We end up at the same primitive skills gathering. No, it just, I grew up in South Florida, and I was a kid, and I was always barefoot. And then I became a tenderfoot, like all of us do when we get older. And then when I had my own kids, they were running around barefoot, and I was remembering how much fun that was. Mm-hmm. And so it took a while to be able to build up the pads. And the connection, the grounding, there's just tons of research on the connection to the earth and the awakening of your feet and all those, Chinese acupuncture points. I mean, there's just a ton of reasons why you want to go barefoot. And I've just really, really enjoyed it. And, I've just loved that. And actually my own kids now are grown and they're tenderfoots again. So I'm laughing at them.
I know I like to go barefoot as much as possible, so I totally understand and get that it really is. There's all that proof about the grounding and your connection to the earth. So I totally
There's also feedback, like I'm like, oh my God, the grass here, I can feel this, or, I'm feeling the soil here, or I'm feeling, as I'm walking across my land, I'm getting a whole nother connection with what is going on the ground that I'm working with. So other than just looking at it or smelling it or touching it, I've got my feet and there's that connection. And I'm like, oh, here, this area is getting a little thin, or, this is a little sandy, or what, this is a little rocky. You know what I mean? You get this whole other level of sensation. It's a real joy. It's a real joy. I don't recommend go slowly. Don't hurt yourself.
Right. That too. So you have a book out. It's called The Grow System, The Essential Guide to Modern Self-Sufficient Living, from growing food to making medicine. Why don't you tell us about your book and what can our listeners expect to find when they pick up a copy?
Absolutely. Yeah. So first of all, we had 18 publishers bid on the book, and at least 5 of them said they saw this book as a New York Times bestseller. So they all, read the whole outline and the sample chapters and they loved it. So when you get a bunch of literary agents and publishers loving your book, then it's a good book. So I'll just say that. The promise of the book is we'll teach you how to grow half of your own food in a backyard-sized space in less than an hour a day. The other is you'll learn the 12 most common ailments and how to treat them naturally with herbs or weeds that are growing in your yard. And then the book goes into so much more. And there is a whole section on soil and making soil. And then there's a whole other section on why genetics are so important. So seed saving and breeding livestock. And then also, what your role in this is, and taking it to a spiritual level. Again, most people are really at the bottom level of like, look, I'm just thinking I need to survive here. But where this goes is unbelievably spiritual, like mystical. It's incredible the things that start to happen when you start growing food and start get connected. You're dealing with forces of creation. You're dealing with raw forces of creation, and magic happens. So it's an incredible journey to go on. And the book goes into that on all those different layers.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Foraging. It can be very intimidating. What are your best get started foraging tips to do it safely?
Yeah, so you definitely be careful, right? Don't just go sticking leaves in your mouth. Right. I did not say that, right? Acorns. Everybody can identify an acorn, and all acorns are edible. And they actually were an incredible staple for the indigenous peoples, and they grow almost everywhere. Like there are very few regions that do not, even in the high deserts, even in the Sonoran Desert, there are different types of trees that grow acorns. So, head over to the Grow Network. We got tons of blogs and discussions and forum threads on different ways to harvest acorns and cook them. And it's actually one of my favorite foods. Aunt Jemima ain't got nothing on acorn pancakes.
Well, what are some good first steps for somebody who wants to work towards being self-sufficient?
Yeah, I always recommend people, and especially this time of year, we're in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going into winter. If you're in the South, it might be a good time to garden right now. Believe it or not, in the South, the fall is often the best time for the gardening. But get started with something. And I really recommend chickens, a backyard flock of chickens. They're not going to lay as prolifically over the winter, but you can get that chicken coop built. You can get those hens. You can start getting them settled in, and start collecting eggs. I mean, really, in just a matter of a couple of weekends, you can be having a little egg factory in your backyard. And those are significant calories. 6 hens will lay 1,500 eggs a year for you. That's so you would have 3 egg omelets every day for breakfast, and you'd have 33 dozen eggs to give away to friends or barter or trade. Huge amount of production, unbelievably nutritious food, and comes in a great compact, it comes in its own container. Doesn't need to be refrigerated. So,
and you bring that up because home harvested eggs can be stored, if done correctly, much longer than store-bought eggs because of the way they're processed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you can store eggs for several weeks, but that you've grown in your backyard, and just keep them in a cool, dry, dark place.
And the taste is totally different, night and day.
You know what? The taste of everything
Yeah.
that you're going to produce in your backyard is night and day. In fact, I travel a lot. People take me out. We go to the best restaurants. None of them compares to the homegrown food, because my homegrown food is grown, and going back to the soil, Holly, it's grown in this incredibly rich, nutrient dense soil, and the plants pick that up. And when you taste it, man, your taste buds know it and you remember it. Unbelievable, fabulous. You'll become a total food snob.
I completely agree. I couldn't agree more. So we really enjoyed having you on the program, Marjory. How can people find out more about you? Just remind them again where your website is and all of your great information.
I bet one of the best places I recommend you go is to go to icangrowfood.com. And I'm doing a webinar on how to grow food in a grid down situation with no experience, even if you're older and out of weight. And we run that webinar about once a month. I really recommend. It's free. I download like 20 years worth of information condensed into, you'll walk away with that webinar knowing exactly, you'll have a plan of what to do. You'll know exactly how to roll that out, and you'll be able to be producing food in just a few weeks. It's a really fabulous, when you come to the webinar, bring your questions. The most popular part of the webinar is the latter part where we have a live Q&A section. So icangrowfood.com.
Well, Marjorie, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered us and the education that you've shared, not only Holly and myself, but all of our listeners across the country. We thank you for that very much.
Thank you so much, Joey and Holly. I appreciate being on the air with you.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.